So today, tomorrow, and Wednesday are gonna very much feel like more like an English than a math class. So you're gonna be writing statements out, and then we're learning a very small part of logic is what we're doing. And the reason we're doing that is to get you guys ready. So we're going to be starting proofs next week, and that's why we're doing the logic type stuff this week. So what's going to happen today is they're going to give you a statement, and for some reason in logic, what they'll do for your statements is they'll use the letters P, Q, and R to stand for a statement. So P might be today is Monday, which is true. Q might be tonight there's a home volleyball game, which is true. And then R might be Friday night there's a home football game. Is that true?
Yeah.
Friday? Okay. So they'll give you P, Q, and R statements, and you have to determine if it's true or false, okay? Another symbol that you guys will see today is something looking like this. And what that means is the negation of or not P. So if P is a statement that was today is Monday, if they had this not sign in there, what you would do is add the word not to that statement. So it would be today is not Monday, okay? So whenever you see that, you just add the word not to it. Then, what we're going to be doing today is working with what's called a compound statement, which has two parts. And I'm going to start by showing you the second page at the bottom. This chart right here is on your cheat sheet that I gave you today, so you don't have to memorize this. But a conjunction, which we're going to start with, is when they take two statements and add it with the word and. And the symbol for and looks like this. So sometimes they'll say, write out the statement P and Q. Other times they'll do this, P and then this symbol and Q. That symbol stands for and then later we're going to be talking about disjunctions, which means you have two statements connected with or, and a capital V stands for or, okay? So what you're not going to like about today is if our statement was P was today is Monday and Q was tonight there is a home volleyball game, and they asked you to do P and Q, you would write out today is Monday and tonight is a home volleyball game. Then what you would have to do is decide if that statement is true or false. Now, for a conjunction which is connected with and, both of those statements have to be true. And today is Monday, and tonight there is a home volleyball game. So that overall statement is true. If one of those were false, or if both of those were false, your overall would be false. Okay? So let's go to your second page to this top right here. Okay? So P, Q, and R are statements kind of talking about this figure right here. And the first one says the figure is a triangle, which is pretty obvious that that one's true. So what I do is in front of P, Q, and R, I write whether those statements are true or false. The second one says the figure has two congruent sides. Isn't that what these little dash marks are saying, is that they're congruent? So in front of here, I'm going to put that one's true also. And then for R, it says the figure has three acute angles. What do you think about that? No. And isn't it because one of them is right? So this one is false. Okay? Now, what they ask you to do is to write out the statement P and R. And you're going to be kind of like, why am I doing this? This is foolish, because you're gonna write out P, put the word and write out R. That's what we're asked to do with this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with P, and you can abbreviate, you can use symbols. So if you could shorten something up, I'm okay with that. When I do figure, I use FIG. When I say it is a triangle, I use a triangle to symbolize, so I don't have to write out the word. So I am totally fine with you guys kind of shortcut words and stuff. And then I also have to write R, so that one is and the figure has 3, so I'm going to use the number 3, acute. Now, one of the things that I do a lot in geometry is my abbreviation for angles is an angle with an apostrophe S. And I just show you that because that's something I use a lot, and if you see that, you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? So right now we wrote out the 2 statements and we connected them with the word and, okay? Now it says find its truth value, and if you guys want to cross this out, I do not make you explain your reasoning, okay? So now we're going to go and we're going to decide if this is true. So how I do that is I go above the P and the R. P we said was true, R we said was false. For an and statement to be true, they both have to be true. So do you guys get this one is going to be false, right? So then we just are going to write false, and that's it. If you check your answer in the book, they're going to explain why it's false. You do not have to do that, okay? So now let's look at B, and this time we're going to write out the statement for Q. Then we're going to do and then we're going to negate R. So Q is, the figure has 2 congruent sides. So the figure has, you can use the letter 2. Congruent, remember, is an equal sign with the squiggly sides. Then that symbol is and now we have to negate R. R is the figure has 3 acute angles. To negate it, you put the word not in there. So we're going to say, and the figure does not have 3 acute angles. The figure does not have Now we need to go in and look at what the truth value is. So our Q was true. Our Q was true. And R was false, but we negated it. And when you negate it, it's going to change its truth value. So it's true. So do you guys get the overall would be true? Okay, so then we're just going to go in and say that this one is true. Right. Now let's go back, and this time we're doing not P and not R. Okay, so I have to negate P. So what I'm going to say is the figure is not a triangle. And then I also have to negate R. So that would be the figure does not have 3 acute angles. Now, not P. If I try to say what not P is, P was true. So when I negate that, it's going to be false. Not R. R was false. So when I negate it, it's going to be true. But notice one's false and one's true. So overall, that makes this one false. Because for this to be true, both of them have to be true. Okay? Everybody understand that? Just a lot of writing. Now we're going to do something called a disjunction. And again, I'm going to go down here to explain the difference. We do these the exact same way. The only difference is with and, you have this symbol. And if I didn't have this note packet or your note sheet, I think of this kind of like a capital A. And then or is like a capital V, okay? With and, it was called a conjunction and both had to be true. With or, it's a disjunction and only one has to be true. We could have two true and that's still fine. The only situation you can't have is they both can't be false, okay? So that's with a disjunction. So let's go to this page right here and we're gonna use this January calendar here. Remember, you do not have to explain your reasoning in these. And we're gonna first look at P, Q, and R and determine if they're true or false. So the first one says January is a fall month. That is false. January is in the winter. The next one, Q, says January has only 30 days. And notice on the calendar here, January actually has 31. So this one is also false. And then it says January 1 is the first day of a new year. And that's true. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Q and write it, then put or, and then write R. Okay? So Q is January, and feel free to go Jan for January, has only 30 days. Or, and then R is January 1 is the first day of a new year. Okay. Now, once I have that written, what I'm going to do is go back to decide whether this is a true or false statement. So Q was false. R was true. This is an or, and with an or, only one has to be true. So what is it overall? True. Okay. Now the next one is P, or the negation of Q. So we're going to write P out first. So I'm going to say January is a fall month. Or not Q. Q is January has only 30 days. So not Q would be something like January does not have only 30 days. January does not have only 30 days. Okay. Now, P was false. And Q is not Q. Q was false, But if I negate it, it's going to change it to true. So overall, what is my truth value? True. Very good. Okay. Then if I look at C, they want us to negate P or R. So P was January is a fall month. Okay. So I'm going to say January is not a fall month. Or, and then R is January 1 is the first day of a new year. January 1 is the first day of a new year. Okay. Now, we have to determine whether this is true or false. Okay? So not P. Well, P was false. So when we negate P, it's going to be true. And then R is true. So we have two trues here, so obviously overall it would be true. Everybody understand that part? Okay. And that's harder than what we have. We're just going to do this page, and this is easier, I think. So the next thing we're going to talk about is something called a conditional statement. And a conditional statement, they usually use P implies Q. This little arrow means implies. And when you see something like this, what it means is if P, then Q. So it could be something like, if it is Monday, then there is a home volleyball game. Okay? So they are going to give you a statement today, and they're not going to be in if-then form, but you have to put it in if-then form. Then they're going to ask you to say what the hypothesis and conclusion of that sentence is. Now, this is important. On your assignment, when you have to determine what the hypothesis and conclusion is, you're going to be writing out the statement, and then what I have you guys do is underline the hypothesis once, but notice I did not underline the word if. The hypothesis is everything with the if, but I don't underline the word if. The conclusion is what your then is, and you double underline that. Okay, and that's how we're gonna do it with our assignment. Make sure with the conclusion you do not underline the word then. And I say this all the time, and then when we get to the quiz, I have kids that underline if, and they double underline then, and then they lose points. You don't underline if, you don't double underline then. Okay? So let's go down here to example 3. And it says identify the hypothesis and conclusion for the conditional statement, and then write the statement in if-then form. So I show this a little bit different, okay? I don't have you write out the hypothesis and conclusion. What I do is I have you write it in if-then form. And what I need to tell you guys is how you write it in if-then form can vary, okay? So I'm gonna write it one way. Yours might look a little bit different than mine, and you're absolutely fine. Typically what you wanna do is try to find a spot in that sentence where you can split it into 2 parts. And you're gonna put if with the beginning part, then with the ending part, okay? So here's how I would do this. If I wanted to put if with this, I could say something like, if you have a mammal, if it is a mammal, something like that. So I'm gonna say, if you have a mammal, Then, and then I'm gonna write the rest of it. Then it is a warm-blooded animal. Okay. Now, once you have that done, is when you're gonna single underline the hypothesis, and that's gonna be you have a mammal, not the word if. And then you're gonna double underline it is a warm-blooded animal. Notice I did not underline if, I did not underline then. Okay. Now let's go down to this one, and again you're trying to figure out like where could I break this statement up into parts. So I'm gonna do it right here. All right, so I'm gonna use if with this part and then with the ending part. So here's what I'm gonna say. If you have, a lot of times that's how I start them, and you don't have to say it like that. You could say if it is something like that, a prism with bases that are regular polygons then it is a regular prism. And then you are going to go back in and you are going to single underline everything with if, not including if. And then you're gonna double underline what's after then, but don't underline then. Okay. Then if I go to my last one here, this one you could write two different ways, but I think what I'm gonna do is just split it up right here again. And I'm gonna say, if you have the sum of the measures, if you have the sum of the measures of two supplementary angles, use SUPP for supplementary is fine, then it is 180. Okay. Then what you can do is go back in and single underline up until the word then, and then double underline after it. And make sure you don't underline if and you don't underline then. And then here it is your assignment. So like I said, it's not that it's super hard, it's just that it's a lot of writing.